saltiness isn't bliss, the spring weather has taken a turn. So what better way to warm up than with Tuscan Tortellini? So I've got a large pan on the stove that is heating up. To that pan, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I'm going to give that oil a chance to heat up before I add my minced garlic. All right, so I had my pan with my oil on high just to heat it up. It is all heated through. So now I'm going to turn it down to medium, and I'm going to add 3 garlic cloves that are minced. And I'm going to cook those for just a couple of minutes in there before we add our next ingredients. Kind of spread them out in the pan a bit. You can hear that sizzle. Here in my pot, I've got a bunch of water that is on a nice gentle boil. To that, I am going to add some delicious 3 cheese tortellini. So these packages are about 9 ounces each. We want anywhere between 8 and 9 ounces. We want 2 of them. And so now we need to cook our tortellini. But this is a great shortcut for this recipe because once we cook it in our pot, we'll dump it in with all our other tasty ingredients and it'll just be minutes before it's done and ready for dinner. So let's get that in the water. All right, so our garlic has a nice brown hue to it. I've pulled that off the heat just for a moment so it doesn't continue to cook. I don't want it to burn. Burner is down to medium-low. Got my tortellini cooking on medium on a very low boil over here. Of course, the water splattered everywhere. And just got those kind of simmering in my pot, cooking very slowly. So next up to our pan with our oil and garlic is going to be 1 can of diced tomatoes. Now you can mix that up and you can go with any variety of canned tomatoes you like, or you can even crush up fresh tomato if you want. And I know I've mentioned in a lot of my videos hubby hates tomatoes. The great thing about these canned diced tomatoes in this recipe, they're going to add a lot of flavor, a lot of texture, a lot of color, and they're going to be easy to eat around and pick out, right? So let's get that pan back on the heat. Let's dump our whole pan in there. Give you a little peek in the pan there without dumping it all out. Get it back on the heat. And to the oil, garlic, and tomato, we're also going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground pepper. In addition to that, we've got a couple of options here. We can go with a ground red pepper to taste, or you can use red pepper flakes. So whichever you prefer, red pepper flakes are going to have a little more kick, a little more spice, so I'm going to stick with the mild one. And just put a little bit in there, just some dashes. So now we want to mix that well. We're here to our noodles, kind of give them a nice mix. Push them down in the water. Once they start to get tender and plump, that's when we know that they're done. So I'm going to lift one out of the water here. Kind of zoom in on that for you. Give it a squeeze. And it does feel nice and tender. So I am going to turn the burner off, drain the water out of the pot, and then we'll move on to our next step. Okay, so our sauce has had a chance to simmer. I've got my burner on low. My noodles are all cooked through. So now I'm going to add those into the pot, mix well, and as soon as I finish that, I will give you guys a nice bird's eye view. So you can probably see the noodles are right at the top here. So now we just want to kind of fold them in, scoop that sauce over them so they all get coated with all the flavors we've added into our pot. All right, bird's eye view. Look at all those tasty chunks of tomato. Kind of all coming up from the bottom there. So now we're just going to cover this and we want to simmer for just a couple minutes and then we'll move on to our last step. All right, so our tortellini and sauce has had a chance to just simmer and blend in our pan here. Now we want to turn the burner off and we want to remove it from the heat or hover it above the heat. So what I like to do is put my trivet on the burner. My trivet is metal so it can get hot, as most trivets are intended to get hot, right? Glass, metal. Prop my pan on the trivet so the heat is still keeping my dish warm without cooking and burning it anymore. I shouldn't say anymore, it's not burned, but cooking it anymore. Last cooking step is we want to add 2 cups of fresh baby spinach. So I have removed the long stem from the spinach, measured out what I need. We want to dump that whole 2 cups in there. And then we want to mix it into our dish until we notice that it starts to wilt. The time has come, guys. Let's get our tasty tortellini, see what I did there, in a bowl. There it is. And now for the really good stuff. Grated Parmesan cheese that we are going to garnish the top with to taste. And then some fresh parsley or basil or both. And we're going to add an additional garnish right on top there. Who's ready for the dog to sneeze and have some tasty tortellini, Tuscan tortellini tonight? Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.